What if I told you that one simple shift in how you handle pain and betrayal could completely transform your relationships, your career, your mental wellness, and your entire life? You might think I'm being dramatic, but I'm about to share with you 5 life-changing benefits of radical forgiveness that will make you reconsider everything you thought you knew about healing and moving on. Most people think forgiveness is about being nice or spiritual. They think it's about letting people off the hook for what they did to you. But what I'm going to show you today is that radical forgiveness is actually the most selfish thing you can do for yourself. Not selfish in a bad way, but selfish in the sense that it gives you back your power, your peace, and your potential like nothing else can. I've studied psychology and human behavior for years, and I can tell you that the people who master radical forgiveness live fundamentally different lives than those who don't. They have better relationships, more success, deeper happiness, and unshakable inner peace. They know how to control their mind instead of letting their mind control them. Now, before we go any further, let me clarify what radical forgiveness actually is, because it's very different from traditional forgiveness. Traditional forgiveness says you should forgive because it's the right thing to do, because you're supposed to be a good person, because holding on to anger hurts you more than it hurts them. Radical forgiveness, developed by Colin Tipping, goes much deeper. It's not about being nice or pretending everything is okay. It's about understanding that on some level, every experience we have, even the painful ones, is serving our growth and evolution. It's about seeing the people who hurt us not as enemies, but as unconscious teachers who help us heal old wounds and become stronger. This doesn't mean we excuse bad behavior or become doormats. It means we stop giving our power away to people and situations from our past. We stop letting other people's actions determine our emotional state, our self-worth, or our capacity for happiness. Let me share the first life-changing benefit of radical forgiveness, and this one alone will shift how you see every difficult person and situation in your life. The first benefit is that radical forgiveness gives you complete emotional freedom. Think about this for a moment. Right now, how much of your emotional energy is tied up in resentment, anger, or hurt from things that happened in your past? How often do you replay conversations or situations where someone wronged you? How much mental space are you giving to people who probably aren't even thinking about you? When you practice radical forgiveness, you reclaim all of that energy. Instead of being emotionally reactive to your past, you'll become emotionally sovereign. You stop being triggered by certain people or situations because you've released the charge around those experiences. I worked with a woman named Lisa who had been carrying anger toward her ex-husband for 7 years after their divorce. Every time she saw him at their daughter's school events, she would feel the surge of anger and resentment. It would ruin her whole day. She was essentially giving him the power to control her emotional state, even though they weren't together anymore. Through radical forgiveness, Lisa began to see that her ex-husband had actually given her several gifts. His betrayal had forced her to become financially independent for the first time in her life. It had made her stronger and more resilient. It had taught her to value herself and not accept less than she deserved in relationships. When Lisa shifted her perspective this way, something amazing happened. She stopped being triggered by him. She could see him at school events and feel completely neutral. She had reclaimed her emotional sovereignty. This is what emotional freedom looks like. But here's what's even more powerful. When you stop being emotionally reactive to people from your past, you also stop attracting similar situations in your future. The law of attraction responds to your emotional state. When you're carrying resentment and anger, you tend to attract more situations that will trigger those same emotions. When you practice radical forgiveness and achieve emotional freedom, you start attracting people and situations that match your new, higher vibration. You attract healthier relationships, better opportunities, and more positive experiences overall. The second benefit of radical forgiveness is that it dramatically improves your relationships, not just with the people you forgive, but with everyone in your life. This happens for several psychological reasons. First, when you're carrying resentment from past hurts, you unconsciously project those fears and wounds onto new people. You might be suspicious of new partners because of how an ex betrayed you. You might have trouble trusting friends because of how someone disappointed you in the past. You might struggle with authority figures because of how a parent or teacher treated you. Radical forgiveness heals these unconscious projections. When you truly forgive and release the past, you can see new people for who they actually are, not as representatives of people who hurt you before. Second, forgiveness makes you more attractive to others. Not just physically attractive, but energetically attractive. People can sense when someone is carrying heavy emotional baggage, and they can also sense when someone has done the work to heal and release it. Think about the people you most enjoy being around. They're probably people who don't complain constantly about their past, who don't hold grudges, who have a lightness and openness about them. This is what radical forgiveness creates in you. I want to share a story about a man named David, who came to me after going through 3 divorces. He was convinced that he just attracted terrible women, that all women were untrustworthy, that he was doomed to be alone or unhappy in relationships. When we started working together, we discovered that David had been carrying deep resentment toward his mother, who had been emotionally unavailable during his childhood. This wound was causing him to unconsciously choose partners who would recreate that same dynamic of emotional unavailability. Through radical forgiveness work with his mother, David began to heal this core wound. He started to see that his mother had done the best she could with her own wounds and limitations. As he released his resentment toward her, something shifted in his entire approach to relationships. Within a year, David met a woman who was emotionally available, supportive, and loving. They've now been happily married for 5 years. The change wasn't in the type of women he met. It was in his own emotional availability and the unconscious patterns he was bringing to relationships. This brings us to an important point about relationship advice. Most relationship advice focuses on communication techniques or behavior modification. But the really key to better relationships is healing your own wounds and releasing resentment from past hurts. When you do this inner work, your outer relationships transform naturally. If you're finding value in this approach to forgiveness in relationships, make sure to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss future content that can support your emotional healing and personal growth. The third benefit of radical forgiveness is that it accelerates your personal and professional success in ways that might surprise you. This happens because resentment and anger literally block your creative energy and problem-solving abilities. When your mind is occupied with replaying past hurts or planning revenge fantasies, that mental energy is not available for creativity, innovation, or strategic thinking. When you're emotionally triggered by people or situations, you're operating from your fight or flight nervous system, which severely limits your cognitive abilities. Radical forgiveness frees up this mental and emotional energy so you can use it for productive purposes. You become more focused, more creative, more resilient in the face of challenges. You stop wasting time and energy on drama and start channeling that energy toward your goals and success habits. Let me tell you about Sarah, a business owner who was struggling to grow her company. She kept having conflicts with employees, clients would frustrate her. And she felt like she was constantly putting out fires instead of focusing on strategic growth. When we looked deeper, Sarah realized she was carrying a lot of anger toward her father, who had criticized her throughout her childhood and told her she would never amount to anything. This unhealed wound was causing her to be defensive and reactive in business situations. She would take client feedback as personal attacks. She would micromanage employees because she didn't trust their competence. Through radical forgiveness work with her father, Sarah began to see how his criticism had actually made her more determined and resilient. It had driven her to prove herself and achieve things she might never have attempted otherwise. When she could see this gift in the wound, she stopped being triggered by criticism or feedback. Her business relationships improved dramatically. She became more collaborative with employees, more receptive to client feedback, more confident in her decision-making. Her company doubled in revenue within 18 months, not because she learned new business strategies, but because she healed the emotional blocks that were sabotaging her success. This is how radical forgiveness creates success. It's not just about feeling better, though that's important. It's about removing the internal obstacles that prevent you from performing at your highest level and achieving your biggest goals. The fourth benefit of radical forgiveness is that it gives you access to profound inner peace and happiness that doesn't depend on external circumstances. This is perhaps the most valuable benefit of all, because it makes you truly free. Most people's happiness depends on what's happening in their lives. If things are going well, they're happy. If things are challenging, they're stressed or unhappy. But when you master radical forgiveness, you develop what I call unshakable inner peace. This doesn't mean you don't feel emotions or that challenges don't affect you. It means you have a deep sense of okayness that exists underneath whatever is happening on the surface. You know that you can handle whatever life throws at you because you've learned to find the gift and the growth in every experience. Traditional forgiveness often leaves people feeling like they should be at peace, but still feeling resentful underneath. Radical forgiveness actually creates genuine peace because it transforms your relationship with pain and difficulty altogether. Instead of seeing painful experiences as things that happen to you, you start to see them as things that happen for you. Every challenge becomes an opportunity for growth. Every difficult person becomes a teacher. Every setback becomes a setup for a comeback. This shift in perspective is incredibly powerful for your mental wellness. Instead of feeling like a victim of circumstances, you feel like the conscious creator of your experience. Instead of feeling powerless in the face of difficulties, you feel empowered to find meaning and growth in every situation. I want to share something personal here. There was a time in my life when I was betrayed by someone I trusted completely. The betrayal was devastating. It affected my work, my relationships, my entire sense of reality. For months, I carried anger and resentment that was eating me alive. When I discovered radical forgiveness and began to apply it to this situation, everything changed. I started to see how the betrayal had actually been a gift. It had shown me where I was being naive and trusting without discernment. It had forced me to develop stronger boundaries. It had led me to discover my passion for helping others heal from similar experiences. When I could see these gifts, the anger and resentment dissolved completely. Not because I forced myself to let it go, but because I genuinely felt grateful for the experience and how it had contributed to my growth. This is the kind of inner peace that radical forgiveness creates. It's not a superficial peace that gets disrupted by every challenge. It's a deep knowing that everything in your life is ultimately serving your highest good, even when you can't see how in the moment. The fifth and final benefit I want to share with you is that radical forgiveness literally rewires your brain for resilience, optimism, and emotional intelligence. This isn't just feel-good psychology. This is based on actual neuroscience research about how forgiveness affects brain function. Studies have shown that practicing forgiveness reduces activity in the brain regions associated with stress and negative emotions, while increasing activity in areas associated with emotional regulation and positive emotions. Over time, this creates new neural pathways that make resilience and emotional balance your default state. When you practice radical forgiveness regularly, you're literally training your brain to look for gifts and growth opportunities in challenging situations. You're developing what psychologists call a growth mindset, where you see obstacles as opportunities to become stronger and wiser. This has profound implications for how you control your mind and create the life you want. Instead of being at the mercy of your emotional reactions, you develop the ability to consciously choose your response to any situation. You become emotionally intelligent in the truest sense. Let me tell you about Maria, who had a pattern of getting overwhelmed and shutting down whenever she faced major challenges at work. She would go into victim mode, complaining about how unfair things were and how she couldn't handle the pressure. Through radical forgiveness work, Maria began to see her challenges differently. Instead of seeing a difficult boss as someone making her life miserable, she started to see him as someone helping her develop patience and stronger communication skills. Instead of seeing work pressure as something happening to her, she started to see it as preparation for the leadership role she wanted. This shift in perspective changed everything about how Maria handled stress. She became known as someone who thrived under pressure, who could find solutions when others saw only problems. She was promoted twice in 2 years, not because she learned new technical skills, but because she developed emotional intelligence and resilience through forgiveness practice. This is how radical forgiveness helps you control your mind and create better life outcomes. It doesn't change what happens to you, but it completely changes how you interpret and respond to what happens to you. Now, I want to address something important. Some people worry that radical forgiveness means becoming a doormat or accepting unacceptable behavior. This is a complete misunderstanding of what forgiveness actually is. Forgiveness is not about the other person. It's about freeing yourself from the burden of resentment. You can forgive someone completely and still choose not to have them in your life. You can forgive someone and still maintain strong boundaries. You can forgive someone and still hold them accountable for their actions. Forgiveness is about your internal state, not your external choices. It's about releasing the emotional charge around past hurts so you can make clear, empowered decisions about your relationships and your life. Before you continue, I'd love to hear from you in the comments. What's one situation in your life where you're struggling to forgive or let go? Sometimes just naming it and sharing it can be the first step toward healing. The beautiful thing about radical forgiveness is that it gets easier with practice. The first time you forgive someone who really hurt you, it might feel difficult or even impossible. But as you experience the freedom and peace that forgiveness brings, you become motivated to forgive more quickly and more completely. You start to see forgiveness not as something you have to do, but as something you get to do. It becomes a gift you give yourself, a way of maintaining your emotional sovereignty and inner peace regardless of what others do. Let me give you a practical framework for beginning to practice radical forgiveness in your own life. First, identify a situation or person you're having trouble forgiving. Start with something moderately difficult, not the most traumatic experience of your life. Ask yourself this question: how has this experience contributed to my growth, strength, or wisdom? What positive qualities have I developed because of this challenge? What would I tell someone else who was going through something similar? This isn't about minimizing real pain or pretending that hurtful actions are okay. It's about looking for the gifts that exist alongside the pain. In my experience, there are always gifts to be found, even in the most difficult situations. Next, try to see the person who hurt you as someone dealing with their own pain and limitations. Hurt people hurt people. This doesn't excuse their behavior, but it helps you understand that their actions were more about their own wounds than about you personally. Finally, make a conscious choice to release your resentment, not for their sake, but for your own freedom and peace. You might need to make this choice multiple times as old feelings come up. And that's perfectly normal. If you want to explore more techniques for healing and emotional transformation, check out our other videos on the channel, where we go deeper into practical tools for creating the life you want. Now, let's talk about how radical forgiveness connects to the law of attraction and manifesting a better life. Many people struggle with manifestation because they're trying to attract positive things while carrying negative emotions from the past. The law of attraction responds to your overall emotional state, not just your conscious desires. If you're trying to attract love while carrying resentment from past relationships, you're sending mixed signals to the universe. If you're trying to attract success while holding anger about past failures or betrayals, you're limiting what you can receive. Radical forgiveness clears these emotional blocks so your energy can align with what you actually want to create. When you're not carrying resentment, anger, or hurt from the past, you naturally vibrate at a higher frequency that attracts more positive experiences. This isn't just spiritual theory. There's psychological research showing that people who practice forgiveness are more optimistic, have better relationships, experience less depression and anxiety, and even have better physical health. All of these factors contribute to creating a better life and achieving relationship goals. Think about it this way. When you're emotionally free from past hurts, you show up differently in every area of your life. You're more confident, more open, more creative, more resilient. You take better risks, make better decisions, and attract better opportunities. I want to share one more story that illustrates this beautifully. James came to me feeling stuck in every area of his life. His career had plateaued, his relationships were unsatisfying, and he felt like nothing he tried worked out the way he wanted. When we explored his background, James revealed that he had been deeply hurt by his business partner several years earlier. The partner had stolen money from their company and destroyed their friendship. James had been carrying intense anger and bitterness ever since. This resentment was affecting everything in James's life. He couldn't trust new business associates. He was suspicious of friends. He felt cynical about people's motivations. This negative energy was literally repelling the success and happiness he was trying to create. Through radical forgiveness work, James began to see how his former partner had actually given him valuable gifts. The betrayal had taught him to be more discerning about who he went into business with. It had forced him to develop better financial systems and oversight. It had shown in his own strength and ability to rebuild after a major setback. As James released his resentment and embraced these lessons, his entire life began to shift. He started a new business that became more successful than his previous one. He met and married a wonderful woman. He developed genuine friendships based on trust and mutual respect. The external circumstances didn't change because James learned new skills or strategies. They changed because his internal state changed. When he cleared the emotional blocks from his past, he became a magnet for the success and happiness he had been seeking. This is the real power of radical forgiveness. It doesn't just heal your past, it transforms your future. It doesn't just make you feel better, it makes your life better in measurable, practical ways. Let me share something important about the difference between radical forgiveness and traditional forgiveness when it comes to self-love and how to forgive yourself. Many people find it easier to forgive others than to forgive themselves for their own mistakes and shortcomings. Traditional approaches to self-forgiveness often involve a lot of guilt, shame, and self-criticism. You're supposed to feel bad about what you did, promise not to do it again, and somehow move on. But this approach often keeps you stuck in cycles of self-judgment and regret. Radical self-forgiveness is completely different. It starts with the understanding that you always did the best you could with the awareness, resources, and emotional state you had at the time. This doesn't mean your actions were necessarily right or that there weren't consequences. It means you're human, and humans make mistakes as part of their learning and growth. Radical self-forgiveness asks you to look for the gifts in your mistakes. What did you learn about yourself? How did you grow stronger? What wisdom can you now share with others? How did you develop compassion, humility, or resilience? When you can see your mistakes as part of your learning journey, rather than evidence of your unworthiness, self-forgiveness becomes not just possible, but natural. You stop beating yourself up for being human and start appreciating the courage it takes to live, love, and try new things even when you don't always get it right. This shift toward radical self-forgiveness is essential for mental wellness and creating a happy life. You can't be truly happy if you're constantly criticizing yourself for past mistakes. You can't create success if you don't believe you deserve good things because of what you've done wrong. Self-love isn't about thinking you're perfect. It's about accepting yourself completely, including your flaws and mistakes, while still being committed to growth and learning. Radical self-forgiveness is one of the most powerful tools for developing this kind of unconditional self-acceptance. As we start to wrap up, I want you to consider what might be possible in your life if you truly mastered radical forgiveness. Imagine being completely free from resentment and anger about your past. Imagine having relationships based on authenticity and love rather than fear and projection. Imagine having access to all of your creative energy and mental clarity because it's not tied up in old grievances. Imagine waking up each day with genuine inner peace, knowing that you can handle whatever comes your way and find growth and meaning in every experience. Imagine attracting opportunities, relationships, and experiences that match your highest potential because you're not carrying heavy emotional baggage from your past. This isn't just fantasy. This is what becomes possible when you commit to the practice of radical forgiveness. It's not always easy, and it doesn't happen overnight, but the benefits are so profound that it becomes one of the most important skills you can develop. The journey of forgiveness is really a journey home to yourself. It's about reclaiming your power from everyone and everything you've given it to. It's about realizing that your happiness, your peace, and your success don't depend on other people's actions or approval. They depend on your ability to find meaning, growth, and love in every experience life offers you. You have the power to transform your life through forgiveness. You have the ability to break free from the patterns of resentment and reactivity that have been limiting your potential. You can choose to see every challenge as an opportunity for growth and every difficult person as an unconscious teacher. If this perspective on forgiveness has shifted something for you, I'd love for you to share this video with someone who might need to hear this message. Sometimes the people closest to us are carrying burdens of resentment that are preventing them from living their fullest, happiest lives. Remember, forgiveness is not about the other person. It's not about excusing bad behavior or forgetting what happened. It's about freeing yourself to live without the weight of past hurts, determining your present experience. The benefits of radical forgiveness, emotional freedom, better relationships, accelerated success, inner peace, and mental resilience are available to you right now. They don't require anyone else to change or apologize. They only require your willingness to see your experiences differently and choose freedom over resentment. If you want to explore more tools for emotional healing and personal transformation, make sure to check out our other videos where we share practical techniques for creating the life you truly want. And don't forget to let me know in the comments what insights from today's discussion resonated most with you. Your life is waiting for you on the other side of forgiveness. The question is, are you ready to claim it?